Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and very pleased to have on the line with me Professor Erwin Chemerinsky, founding dean and distinguished professor of law, and Raymond Pike, professor of First Amendment law at the University of California Irvine School of Law with a joint appointment in political science. The website there, law.uci.edu, and you can tweet him at, or you can tweet the law school, I guess, at UCI Law. And Professor, welcome to the program.
It's always great to talk with you.
It's great having you back with us. You're talking here about how you can sue for climate change action. Citizens have the right to sue for climate change action. Explain this.
There is no problem facing the planet that's more serious, more urgent need of being addressed than that of climate change. And the reality is that the federal government, the Environmental Protection Agency, haven't taken adequate steps to deal with this. And so the question is, what can be done to force them to do so? Several years ago, the Supreme Court ruled that Massachusetts and other states could sue the EPA to force them to adopt rules with regard to climate change. And there's now a lawsuit up in Oregon that's suing the United States government that's trying to say that the United States is responsible for the natural resource in the country, that it holds the natural resources in public trust. There's long been a doctrine that the government holds natural resources in public trust. And so the theory is that the government is failing its duty to protect the public trust and not dealing with climate change. And relatively recently, a federal magistrate judge in Oregon said this lawsuit could go forward.
Wow. So who brought the lawsuit, and who specifically are they suing? The Department of the Interior?
The lawsuit was brought by some environmental groups. The actual named plaintiffs are children, and the claim is that the United States government is failing its longstanding duty to protect the public trust, and the named defendants are heads of agencies in the federal government.
Is this the lawsuit that Jim Hansen was part of?
That I don't know.
Okay. Because I believe that he was involved. Maybe he was just suggesting it, that because he wrote this book, to his granddaughter, that the children of America have standing to sue because their future is being ruined by basically with these fossil fuel companies. Why sue the government and not sue, for example, ExxonMobil, now that we know that they've known for 50 years or more that their product would produce this result?
Well, the key is how to have a systemic response that can make a difference. And the hope is that if the United States government takes this seriously, they will then impose the regulations on ExxonMobil and everybody else who's contributing to global warming. Otherwise, it would have to be suing each and every company separately. And that's a far greater burden than bringing the suit against the United States and forcing the United States to take effective action.
Although it appears that that ExxonMobil is like, the elephant in the room. They had the research. I mean, we now know this. They knew back in as possibly as early as the 70s, certainly by the 80s, that their product was going to have a deleterious effect on the environment. I mean, they also knew it was causing cancers and asthmas and things. And instead of investing in technology to clean up or scrub the emissions in their products, they chose to fund anti-science, or science deniers. Go the tobacco company route, fund doubt. Coke Industries. I don't know if Coke Industries knew what their product was doing back in the 80s. I don't know when they learned that. I'm guessing that they know it now. But that's two fairly large targets right there.
And I certainly would support suing them, and there's a bill in the California legislature to try to create some liability for false statements that were made by companies like ExxonMobil. But none of those are instead of this suit that's pending in Oregon court.
Okay, so
suing to force the United States government to protect the public trust isn't inconsistent with also going after individual polluters.
Absolutely, I totally agree. So let's say that the lawsuit is successful. What happens?
Well, what it would do is require that the United States government finally promulgate meaningful regulations to deal with climate change. We've seen some regulations from the federal government, like with regard to the coal industry, but they don't go nearly far enough in terms of who's regulated and what needs to be done.
So would these be things executed by the executive branch, or would this mandate legislation, or how is the federal government obligated to respond?
It would be the same as any other court order compelling government action. Think about this in the context of school desegregation. Courts ordered that school boards desegregate the schools,
right,
and the schools had to comply. Courts have ordered that housing projects be desegregated, and the government had to comply. This would say to the government, you have to promulgate the regulations that are needed in order to deal with the serious problem, climate change. That your failure to do so is failing to protect the resources that you hold in public trust for all of us.
Okay, so we have this one lawsuit coming out of out of Oregon. You said, are there others contemplated?
Pardon?
Are there others contemplated?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm not involved in this case at all.
Mm-hmm. You're reporting on it, essentially.
Right, and I was at one point involved in a similar case at the Supreme Court review, but this is a case that I learned of when the magistrate judge denied the motion to dismiss and said that this is a case that can go forward.
Wow. Okay. So this bottom line here is let's keep an eye on this thing, right?
Absolutely. What we need to do is look for every way we can to deal with the problem of climate change. And this case takes doctrines in the law that have existed for 200 years, or even more than that. This notion that the government protects natural resources, holds them in a public trust for all of us, actually goes back to English law. You can find American law precedents from early in American history. And what the plaintiffs have said here is the government is failing in its duty to protect the natural resources that it holds in public trust for all of us. Force them to do that. Yeah,
I mean, the concept of public trust was so just routinely understood by pretty much everybody at the founding of our nation that most of what we call states now call themselves commonwealths. Many of them still do. It's the commonwealth. The wealth of the state is held in common by the government. That's the whole point of the government.
Yeah. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah. Brilliant stuff. Professor, keep us up to date on what's going on with us.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much. Professor Erwin Chemerinsky, founding dean and distinguished professor of law, and Raymond Pryke, professor of First Amendment law at the University of California, Irvine School of Law. So great having him with us.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.